Okay, well now we know. That's good. Michael, the please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I shall read again where well, to tell you, first of all, this will be about as long, I think, as my talk last month. The text is a little bit shorter, but I suspect that the readings are a little bit longer. So for those who would like to know, I expect that the time span is about the same, and we should therefore have a possibility of talking or dealing with any or looking at some issues, or I'll try to answer any questions. Very difficult on this subject, I think. I shall read again where I left off last time, what I quoted at the end of my last talk on the Faustian temptation. It was Michel Marmin's encomium for Don Giovanni, which was published in the French cultural magazine Élément and was published in English in a magazine which I edited at the time called The Scorpion in 1985.
Oh, I remember The Scorpion.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's very kind of you. Well, if you remember the issue on romanticism,
I don't.
well, it was quite I think it was. I can't even remember myself. It was issue number 8, and in the issue on romanticism, I had a quotation from Élément, from Michel Marmin, and from Pardes, a quotation from Georges Gondinet, who edited the French issues of the French books of Evola. He translated them himself and edited them into French from the Italian. And Gondinet's argument was perhaps more standard and more logical that Da Ponte, who was himself very much a follower and believer in revolution, although, as I said last time, he was actually impoverished by the French Revolution because he couldn't find any employment after all the aristocrats had been beheaded. But anyway, he wrote the libretto for Don Giovanni, and traditionally it's interpreted, the great song Viva la Libertà is the song of freedom. But Michel Marmin interpreted it differently, and I quoted at length from Michel Marmin because I thought it was interesting to get the balance, because most interpretations and understandings are closer to Georges Gondinet's. And Michel Marmin wrote this very strong admiration for Don Giovanni as a person, as a symbol of freedom. And I'll read that again, and then we can lead into Don Juan and the legend of the Stone Man. On the eve of the triumph of egalitarianism and bourgeois values, Don Giovanni tragically affirms a wholly different system of values. In Don Giovanni, there is a lightness of spirit and a Dionysian omnipotence, a complete freedom of action, which the lowly and mediocre conspire to undo. It is none other than Don Giovanni who sings the superb Viva la Libertà. It is he, the magnificent lover of all women, who tastes life to the full. It is he who defies death, and a few minutes before confronting the Commendatore, sings again the sublime and insolent Vivan le femmine, viva il buon vino, sostenane gloria d'umanità. Long live women and wine, the sustenance and glory of humanity. Yes, Don Giovanni is a hero in the most traditional sense of the term, and the most solitary, the most pathetic, the most generous of all heroes. He is the last free man, the last pagan, the last aristocrat, not understood and despised by all the others who oppose him in the name of their derisory and bourgeois concept of honor. That was Michel Marmin in 1985. The legend of Don Juan, more surely even than the legend of Faust, to which it seems to me so closely related, presents the choice: security or freedom, health or adventure, dictatorship or anarchy. Sexual order, opposed to a chaotic free-for-all, has its rationale, does it not? Sexual freedom down the centuries exacts an obvious but easily ignored price on the principle of consume now and pay later. In an entertaining short autobiography come novel of Leporello by the late writer Jean Dutour, which I read since the last Soteria talk, Don Giovanni's factotum reminds the reader that Don Giovanni spent as much time being treated for and recovering from what the writer coyly refers to as the gifts of Venus, as he does in the pursuit and enjoyment of his many conquests. As we shall see, it is that same gift of Venus which is vouchsafed to the composer Adrian Leverkuhn in the guise of the charming, delicate little butterfly, Heteria Esmeralda, in Thomas Mann's rendering of the Faust legend. I have already pointed to the end of Faust. What of the end of Don Juan? A marked difference to the fate of Faust is his courage at the end. To the last moment, it seems he chooses freedom before salvation. The depiction of that scene at the end of Mozart's Don Giovanni must be among the most familiar scenes in opera. And here we have an illustration, I hope, if Stead's got it to hand, by Jean Sauvé to the 1682 posthumous edition of Molière's Don Juan. Have you got that there? It just shows you the stone guest. It's a rather amusing little piece. I picked out the internet. It was from I think the second edition of Don Juan, or the first complete edition of Molière's works, I think. So there we are. Yeah. So there we've got on the left Don Juan holding up the candle, and here is the stone guest, L'Homme de Pierre, who is the murdered father of one of Don Juan's victims, and Leporello looking rather shocked and frightened on the right. And it's called there, interestingly, Le Festin de Pierre, the fate of stone, or the celebration of stone. But he's called the L'Homme de Pierre because he is the statue that has come down and accepted the invitation, which reminds me a little bit of the invitation to Banquo in Shakespeare's Macbeth. Fail not our feast, and Banquo says, I shall not, and he doesn't, and appears as a ghost. Of the versions which I have seen of Don Giovanni, I've seen 2 in real life and about 6, I think, on the internet, not entirely, but partly at least. Nearly all but one, I think, really, follow the legend of the stone guest and the moral warning. Among the several versions of Don Giovanni which can be seen on YouTube, for example, only one I found comes close to an interpretation sympathetic to the man's fate and Michel Marmin's interpretation. And that is Jean Sivadier's 2017 production from Aix-en-Provence. The modern dress, hyperactive and hectic, nervous, high-speed, breathless interpretation in which Don Giovanni is presented as a kind of latter-day Christ libertine, rushing through life in a blaze of glory, wine, woman, and song, with a murderer on the side, is the only one I have seen which has highlighted gesture and choreography in Don Giovanni. Don Giovanni in this version is always on the move, just as Faust is. It is in his very nature that he cannot keep still, for keeping still implies acquiescence to God's law, or sexual laws, or both. Keeping still, I would suggest, is of course very much the injunction that we've had during this time of the epidemic. Don Giovanni's life is an itinerary, not only of women, but places too. It is apparently the voice of goodness and freedom which tells us to revert or to keep to an established rhythm and order and place. In contrast to the modern dress and stage scenery, the orchestra in the X production plays with period instruments. Apart from dance and movement, this production highlights the language and truth and dissemblance of the face, something which both Mozart's opera and the legend itself invites. Seeing Don Giovanni on YouTube offers us the chance to see the singer's facial expressions at close range, which is an advantage over a real concert visit. Some may be offended by the part timeless, part 1970s, not 1770s atmosphere and scenery of this production, which we'll see part of in a moment. But Mozart had himself transposed the scene of the legend by 100 years to his own time. I personally find the energetic performance of the Canadian baritone, Philip Sly, as Don Giovanni, and Nahuel de Piero Sancho Panza-like and ultimately affectionate interpretation of Leporello as disturbing, moving, and a resounding triumph. Is Don Giovanni, and to an extent we can ask the same question of Faust, a rapist and libertine, a criminal? Or is he a champion of liberty and the voice of the unconquered? Or most disturbingly, is he both? A toto di vilate tacciato mai sarò, he cries, as the Uomo di Sasso comes forward to claim him, it will never be said of me that I am afraid. Don Giovanni is, whatever we think of him, no coward. He defies fate and gives the stone guest his hand, eccola. And that eccola corresponds in Don Giovanni to the Faustian signature. The hand closes on him and it is icy cold. The insistent demand to repent and Don Giovanni's response of no brings uncomfortably to my mind a torture scene. Confess your heresy. No. Confess. No. See. No, no, no. We are at the closing of the opera. Don Giovanni is enjoying life to the full, shortly to be cut off in his prime, warned by Don Elivra, but not heeding her, she who still loves him. There has been a very different interpretation of her role, but that's another matter. That was from Jean Tutor. But she begs him in the normal interpretation, unsuccessfully, to make his peace with society, to think of other people, to cease to be selfish, to abandon his wild ways, to love one woman only. He laughs her to scorn and even attempts to seduce her again. The festivities are interrupted by the arrival of the stone guest, l'uomo di sasso, l'uomo bianco, the image cast in stone of Donna Anna's dead father. Here in this production, the embodiment of justice and vengeance appears on stage smoking a cigar with red wounds that Don Giovanni inflicted, suggesting Christ's wounds to doubting Thomas from St. John's Gospel. Absurd? Yes. But both Faust and Don Juan are legends with a godly, or is it a devilish, share of the absurd. It is, after all, not very likely that a statue will come to life and accept an invitation to dinner. And even in the 18th century or the 17th century, I think they would have thought it unlikely. Da Ponte was well aware of that and highlights the comedy in his libretto by giving Don Giovanni the words in humorous understatement as the statue appears, non l'avrai mai creduto. I would never have believed it. And then telling Leporello to lay another place at table. Non l'avrai mai creduto, ma farò quel che potrò. Leporello, un'altra cena, fa che subito si porti. Making me wonder if all along Leporello has not played a Mephistophelian role. Yes, the legend is an admixture of comedy and something bitter, something sinister, and the skill of the composer and librettist combine to offer both the tragic and the comic, in my opinion, are superbly maintained in this production. Here the stone guest is steaming with icy cold. When demonic forces appear, the room temperature sinks, something of which we are reminded in Thomas Mann's description of the tempter's visit. So how just is justice here? Just as Hamlet's ghost leaves the spectators uneasy as to his purity and goodness, when after all it is said of the ghost, at the crowing of the cock he started like a guilty thing upon a guilty summons. So is this call to repentance not entirely reassuring? In a pose that some might see as blasphemous, Philip Sly's Don Giovanni takes on the aspect of Christ the martyr. Do we live vicariously in Don Juan or in Christ? Or is this Christ martyr image here a reflection of the devil's ardor for the grotesque, or Don Giovanni's, or even on the director's part, or are both suggested? Only a legend so profoundly rooted in the consciousness of a specific culture could offer us so many possibilities and move us so profoundly. So we have the last scene here from this version, the Aix-en-Provence version of Don Giovanni. Need to get right to the end of it.
Can everyone hear that?
Except for me, because I can't hear anything, as we know.
Can Father Frank, can you hear this?
I think you've muted them all, probably.
No. Was everyone able to hear that?
I can't hear anything.
Ah.
We can't hear that.
Oh.
Right.
So somebody else couldn't hear it. That's interesting because I have exactly the same problem.
Share computer sound. Share computer sound.
I was hearing it.
Oh, Mick, can you hear this?
No, I can't hear anything, Stead.
Oh, that's interesting. So we've got an issue here. Well, people who'd like to hear it, perhaps I should just give them can they go to YouTube? Because it would pity if you can't hear it.
Yes.
It's
indeed.
obviously an update. This is something that I had last time with a blot. It's obviously some kind of an update, and some people. I met someone in a context with teaching, and he couldn't hear a YouTube video. So this is obviously something that we've all got to find out from the webinar service, I think. I can give, if people would like to hear, I think it is really worth watching and listening to. Can probably put the link in chat, might be the easiest.
Yeah,
I
you could put that in chat. Michael from London, you were able to hear that, were you?
Yes. I mean, it was music. I mean, he hadn't started singing.
No,
but you could hear something. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Beautifully.
That's extraordinary, really, isn't it?
Could anyone else hear it? Edith, could you hear it?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
I couldn't.
Stefan?
I couldn't.
No.
Very interesting, isn't it?
I couldn't either.
And,
Yeah.
Mick, you
Okay.
couldn't
So
hear
it's this. I'm glad it's not me because I have I'm paranoid about my inability to do anything technical. But now I hear other people have the same problem. It's obviously something to do with some kind of webinar update that affects some people depending on which version they have. I've had this with WebEx as well, so it's not just one particular system.
Is it Britain vis-a-vis the continent? Is everybody else?
That's an interesting idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Yes, that could be. Oh no, Mike said he couldn't hear it, so it doesn't work.
Yeah. Mayor Ron, I mean, were you able to hear that?
No, I couldn't.
You couldn't hear it?
No.
Okay, how strange. Paul?
No, I'm further away again, but it might still be reaching me, but I couldn't hear it.
You couldn't hear it. Okay, that is it. Mate, I'll just try it again. It may have been. I mean, he hadn't started singing. Maybe it was a bit faint. Let's just try it again.
I think people would know by now.
Yeah, I think so. No, okay, no, that is strange. That's
I
unfortunate.
can't hear a word.
Okay, so we will look for the future. Okay,
Yeah.
but if you send that to chat, then I'm positioned to start with it. But if you give it I've also got the place. If anybody is interested, it is worth listening to, I think.
Michael, you're the co-host. Why don't you play the video, see if people can hear it?
I don't think they will. Instead, I suggest we just. Well, I mean, because I'm very bad at these things. We'll spend another 5 minutes with me messing around.
Do you have access to any speaker? So you can, connect it to your speaker and then that way, share it with us. I used to do so in my lectures.
You mean you use the microphone that I'm using for the
Yeah.
voice?
Yeah.
That's
an option, easier one.
Yeah. I don't think I. Might do.
I would have thought the easiest is for people to see it in YouTube on their own YouTube. I'm sure everyone's got YouTube, I would guess.
Yeah. Have you got it there, Michael, to just play? I mean, you could just screen share and just see.
Yeah, I'm a bit against this because I know it's going to take a lot of time. Okay. I'll try it. Okay, I'll try it. So what do I do?
I'm going to see if I can find some speakers. That might be an option.
Okay. Something's definitely happened because this happened with WebEx as well, as I said, with the teachings. So these technical things are sent to try us, I guess.
You have no idea what your teams can accomplish until you've tried Monday.com.
I can hear her.
Monday.com is a super
We could say, oh, hello there, Paul. Nice to see you. We got a technical issue, as you probably. I don't know how long you've been on.
product could meet our needs, but
I can certainly hear
Monday.com
her
is so
speaking.
adaptable. We use it for everything: roadmaps, projections, hiring, product management.
Well, yeah. Anyway, nice to see you. Nice to see you, Edith.
Hiya.
Hello. It's interesting. I thought it was just my problem because last time one of Stead's plots, I couldn't hear the video he showed, but this time I've got about, I think over half the people can't hear the YouTube video. So there's some strange update on these things. And Stead's trying to fix it or try to find a solution. My suggestion is we just all listen to it on YouTube. But anyway, yeah. So Paul, how are you over there? Nice to see
Very
you.
well indeed. Thanks, Michael.
It's very, very late there, isn't it? What is it? About 1 in the.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not because you've gone on to daylight saving.
Oh,
So
right.
it's only 10 to 11 here. Yeah.
Oh, right. I thought it was more like midnight or 1 o'clock.
No,
or something.
so it's a good time for me.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. Great. Have you just come
We've
on?
just come out of our 4th lockdown.
Yeah. You're really having a hard time over there. I've heard it. I don't like what I hear at all.
No, it's very restricting.
Yeah.
New Zealand or outside?
Dad, I really think people should follow it on YouTube because otherwise we'll take too much time.
I just got some loudspeakers.
Okay. Right.
But if everyone was able to hear that lady,
yes, I think we could. Could everybody hear that strange advertisement?
Yes.
Because that means
Certainly.
you can probably do it.
Okay.
It won't be the best quality, but it's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, the lady's voice was pretty clear. If that's the quality, it would be okay. I can't hear anything.
So, Mike, are you trying to find the video to screen share?
Oh Lord, I'm not very good at this stuff. What do I have to do?
Right, let's
okay. Okay,
Yes.
hang on. I think I know what I have to do. Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. I'll give it a try. Silent. Okay. It's perhaps not quite right. That's a little bit.
Yeah,
later.
yeah. We can see if you take the.
Okay. Let's see. Can people hear that?
No.
No.
No, you haven't played it yet. It's not.
I
playing.
did. I did. I played it just for a second.
If you can just if you just click it because it's paused at the moment, I think.
No, I know, but is that?
If you can do that again and click share computer sound, which is accessible via the 3 dots on the ribbon.
You're asking the wrong person, really.
I know.
Where is the? No, I don't see the ribbon.
Can you see the stop screen share?
No. Ah, yeah. Sorry. Yes.
To the left of that, there'll be 3 dots. Click on
Got
those.
it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which one should I get? Oh, Ton freigeben, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I play it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, let's see. People hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, well, could everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Yes.
They'll play it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, this is just shortly before the final scene. And then we go into the final scene.
Bravi, cosa rara. E ti par del bel concerto? Conforme al vostro merito. Ah, che piatto saporito, ah, che piatto saporito, saporito, saporito. Ah, che barbaro appetito. Che boccone magicante, mi par proprio di svenire, mi par proprio di svenire. Nel vedere i miei bocconi, mi par proprio di svenire, mi par proprio di svenire. Ah, che barbaro appetito, che bocconi da gigante. Nel vedere i miei bocconi, mi par proprio di svenire. Ah, che barbaro appetito, proprio di svenire. Che bocconi da gigante, mi fa proprio di svenir, mi fa proprio di svenir, mi fa proprio di svenir. Piatto, servo. E vivano i litiganti, pensa il vino. Eccellente margine. Questo pezzo di fagiano piano può inghiottire. Sta mangiando quel marrano, fingerò di non capir. Questa poi la conosco purtroppo. Leporello, oh, con Dio. Parla schietto, un mascalzone. Non mi lascia una flessione. Le parole proferire, le parole proferire. Mentre un angio fischia un amico, non so fare cos'è. Scusate, scusate. Sia eccellente il vostro cuoco, sia eccellente il vostro cuoco, che lo voglio anch'io provar, che lo voglio anch'io provar. Sia eccellente il cuoco mio, sia eccellente, lo voglio anch'io provar. Avevo prova, che l'amore mio, ancor voleva fare con te, io non lamento gli inganni tuoi. Presso della sua fede qualche mercè mi maraviglio. Cosa volete? Cosa volete? Se non sapete, non resto qui, non resto qui. Quasi la io te ridere, io te ridere, cielo che schieri, che vuoi mio bene? Brava! Perfido! Brava! Perfido! Lascia che mangi! Lascia che mangi! E se ti piace mangia con me! Se non si muove, visto se viva le femmine, viva il buon vino, sostegno e gloria d'umanità, sostegno e gloria d'umanità. Si femmine, viva il buon vino, viva le femmine, viva il vino, sostegno e gloria d'umanità. Sostegno e gloria d'umanità, sostegno e gloria d'umanità, umanità, umanità, sostegno e gloria d'umanità. Che grido questo mai, che grido questo mai, a vedere, cosa sta? Che grido diavolato, che grido diavolato, telefonello, cos'è? Cos'è? Che cos'è? Ah, signor, per carità, non andate fuori di qua, l'uomo di sasso, l'uomo bianco. Ah, padrone, io gelo, io manco, se vedesti che figura, se sentiste come va, da, 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 non capisco niente, da, 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 così, in verità, ah, sentite quel batte, apri, io gelo, apri, apri, batto per togliermi di trigo, ad aprire io stesso andrò, io stesso. Non voglio più veder l'amico che me li nasconderò, nasconderò. Ton Giovanni, a cena al teco, m'invitasti e son venuto. Non l'avrei giammai creduto, ma farò quel che potrò. Le morello un'altra cena, ma che subito si porti. Ah, padron, siamo tutti morti. Tranne Dio. Non si pace, dicevo chi si pace, dicevo celeste, scusate. A torto di virtate, cacciato mai sarò. Risolvi, ho già risolto. Dite di no, o ferma il cuore in petto, non ho timor, verrò. Dammi la mano in pegno, eccola! Ahimè, cos'hai che gel questo mai? Tempi di cancia bianca e l'ultimo momento. No, ch'io non mi pensa né lontan da me. Tempi che sceleranno, no vecchio infatuato. Tempi di sì, senti salir di sì, godescono acque di vogo
Oh,
So hope you found as powerful as certainly I did. It's, as I say, interpretation, the only one I can find, which leans heavily towards Michel Maman's interpretation of Don Giovanni, the hero, rather than the traditional interpretation of Don Giovanni, the justly punished. It does have the additional advantage, that production, that Don Giovanni is believable as an attractive man for women. A lot of the interpretations have Don Giovanni, and you think, how on earth? But Sly is very good looking and it's quite believable.
Should we stop?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Stop on that. Yeah. Oswald Spengler describes what he understood as Faustian culture in his Untergang des Abendlands, the decline of the West. What did he mean by Faustian culture? In his concept of Faustian man, the Faustian temptation is to project oneself out into the immeasurable. Spengler contrasts this with what he called Hellenic or Apollonian culture, which he describes as a culture of restraint and closed horizons. For Spengler, as for Kierkegaard, the Greeks had no notion in their culture of temptation. There is Faustian temptation only within a Faustian culture. Incidentally, Jean Mabille wrote very much against this in his book published by Copernic, which was the editing house of the French New Right, called Dieu maudit, in which he argued very strongly that the gods of the North and the gods of the South were comparable. That's another debate, perhaps for another day. In Goethe's Faust, too, Mephistopheles declares that he is not at home in the South, and the Southern witches' Sabbath is different to that of the North. Later, Thomas Mann's tempter will rebuke the tempted genius for addressing him first in Italian, che costa, insisting that they should both speak German. Sprich nur Deutsch, es ist meine Lieblingssprache. Spengler contrasts the energy of northern man with what he called, quote, the languid world feeling of the South. So, he argued, a colonial culture is only aware of a kind of repeating present, not a progression, whereas the Faustian culture, which often enough bids time cease, remember Faustus in Marlowe, midnight cease, midnight never come, time cease and midnight never come. Fair nature's eye, rise, rise again and make perpetual day. So that he believes that time does not recur but progresses. A belief in reincarnation is contradictory to the Faustian worldview and absent from it. Faust the Greybeard seeks to regain youth and retrieve opportunities lost. A young Faust flies south and is confronted with the temptation of the South and beauty, embodied for Goethe and for Marlowe in the figure of Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy is, of course, an illusion. The classical illusion is a projection of our own ideals, but does not embody a real person. Beauty of the idealized kind is an illusion for an old man, and maybe a perilous one. So it is for Faust, and so it is for Aschenbach in Der Tod in Venedig, where the boy Tadzio, in the form of the Greek god Hermes, leads Aschenbach into the underworld of death. Thomas Mann's Dr. Faustus is a monumental 20th century romance recounting again the tale of Faust in the 20th century, which divests itself of Goethe's pantheistic optimism and instead wails in the place of salvation's cheer, with broken love in lament for a fallen friend. And the fallen friend is at once Nietzsche, is at once Germany. Mann's Dr. Faust is a wail of agony, desolation, loss, and despair. Yet it is also a classic, a work of numbing literary beauty and grandeur. Mann wrote Dr. Faustus in exile in 1943 at the time that the Allied bombing campaign had really begun in earnest, and the cities of Germany, including Mann's most beloved Munich, in which most of Dr. Faustus takes place, was being bombarded by the British and American air forces in an act which many, including Thomas Mann himself, interpreted as an act of pitiless biblical vengeance. He who sows the whirlwind reaps the storm. That quotation is actually in Dr. Faustus. Dr. Faustus was first published in 1947. It is subtitled The Life of the German Composer Adrian Leverkühn. And the biography opens with the first lines of the second canto of Dante's Inferno, which I thought perhaps did I send you the link for that today? I think I did. I'm not quite sure. Or did I not? Possibly I didn't.
Yes. No,
I did. Or I didn't. I did. Oh, great. Okay. Have we got any Italian native speaker?
I think we have.
We have? No?
Well, a little bit. I'm Italian.
Well, there you go. Then would you like to...
You didn't know, Michael, did you?
No, I sort of vaguely was aware that you had Italian jelly sounded Italian. Yes. Then
do you want me to have a go?
Yeah, have a go. Absolutely. Yeah.
The Italian part.
The Italian part. Yes.
Okay. Lo giorno se ne andava e l'aereo bruno toglieva gli animali che sono in terra dalle fatiche loro e io solo m'apparecchiava a sostenere la guerra sì del cammino e sì delle pietate che ritrarrà la mente che non erra. O muse o alto ingegno ormai aiutate, o mente che scrivesti ciò che io vidi, qui si parrà la tua nobilità.
Thank you. Yeah, and somebody perhaps. Well, we haven't got any female roles in the Faustus, so perhaps Edith, would you like to read the English translation?
Okay, but I've lost a tooth, so I don't know if I sound okay. Anyway, the day withdrew and the twilight air relieved the earthly beasts of their burden, and just I alone girded myself to continue the struggle of the right way and of sorrow, which the unerring mind will retrace. O Muse, O time-honored genius, help me now. O mind which wrote down what I saw, let your nobility here be manifest.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I realize I'm an Italian native speaker of maybe some mistakes in that translation. I take responsibility for that. Anyway, thank you. In his novel come biography, come autobiography of Adrian Leverkuhn, Man's Symphony in written form begins with a modest disclaimer by the biographer. The biographer is Leverkuhn's friend, a respectable doctor of philosophy, Serenus Sightbloom, serene timer flower, who perhaps resembles Thomas Mann's brother Heinrich or Victor, for they lived respectable lives, lives not tempted by what might be called the demonic, whereas their brother was tempted, shall we say, by the intoxication of great deeds and misdemeanors. Adrian Leverkuhn abandons theology to devote himself to musical composition. Abandons theology. That should sound familiar. I have two different translations from the German of Sightbloom's opening words at the beginning of the book. And I've offering them both because I think it serves as a reminder that writing can develop very differently in the hands of different translations. And when we're dealing with the Faust legend, and so much of it has Don Giovanni has so much is in another language, in French or Italian or German, it is well to remember that you can have a very different impression according to the translation. That, of course, is obvious, but it's easy to forget. You pick up a translation and you think, okay, this is a good book or a bad book. And I sometimes see that with people who review books, so it goes to the Nobel Prize for Literature, which has to be in English, and nobody mentions, or they certainly don't highlight the fact that a lot depends on your translator if you're going to receive the Nobel Prize, and is it the translator receiving the prize or not? So here are two translations anyway.
Mike, before I screen share, maybe you can see who who's available and to read, perhaps.
Yeah. Oh, I see. You mean if I press the arrow, I can see everybody at the. Yeah. Oh, right. A lot of people here. I didn't realize that. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose Paul, would you like to read one of the translations? That would be excellent. And who would like to read the second translation? Well, maybe Michael from Michael York, Michael from London.
Sure.
The second one.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't matter. Paul, if you read the first one, and Michael from York, the second one.
I'll have to bring it a little bit closer to me.
I can increase the size of this a bit.
That's okay. I can see it now. Let there be no misapprehension that it be in any way owing to a desire on my part to draw attention to myself. In narrating the life of the ever-living Adrian Leverkuhn in this first and surely provisional biography of that man and musical genius, so dear, so horribly afflicted, raised high and cast down, that I begin with a few words about my person and my involvement. I do so only because I work on the assumption that the reader, I should better say the future reader, since for the time being there is not the remotest chance that my work will see the light of day, unless it be that by some miracle it succeeds in slipping out of our encircled fortress Europe, to breathe to those outside an inkling of the secrets of our loneliness. Allow me to reiterate that it is only because I anticipate that there will be a wish to know something as to the who and what of the man writing these lines, that with this opening I furnish some details concerning my own person, not without being aware indeed that by doing so, I may awaken doubts on the reader's part as to whether he is in the right hands, meaning whether the existence that I have led, pardon me, makes me the right man for this task, a task to which I have been drawn perhaps more for reasons of the heart than out of any essential affinity to or with my subject.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is that somewhat more elaborate translation, perhaps, and this one perhaps a more concise translation.
Okay. I wish to state quite definitely that it is by no means out of my wish to bring my to bring my own personality into the foreground that I preface with a few words about myself and my own affairs this report on the life of the departed Adrian Leverkuhn. What I here set down is the first and assuredly very premature biography of that beloved fellow creature and musician of genius, so afflicted by fate, lifted up so high, only to be so frightfully cast down. I intrude myself, of course, only in order that the reader, I might better say, the future reader, for at this moment there exists not the smallest prospect that my manuscript will ever see the light, unless by some miracle it were to leave our beleaguered European fortress and bring to those without some breath, of the secrets of our prison house, to resume, only because I consider the future readers will wish to know who and what the author is. Do I preface these disclosures with a few notes about myself? Indeed, my mind misgives me that I shall only be awakening the reader's doubt whether he is in the right hands, whether, I mean, my whole existence does not disqualify me for a task dictated by my heart rather than by any true competence for the work.
Yes, thank you very much. So there you have it. Two translations, I think. Yeah.
I very much prefer the second. Did anyone prefer the first?
We're going to have a.
It was more colorful. The first was more colorful.
I think, yeah, the second is more concise and.
The second is much more concise. The first is more elaborate.
Yeah.
Is there, yeah, well, as you've asked that, is there any other sort of opinion about preferences?
I didn't like that word fellow creature. Sometimes my experience is that when translating into English is a very rich language, but however, in some areas it is too poor, I find. And when you translate something from a subtle language such as German, Greek, or even Scandinavian, you think that you trivialize it in an impossible way.
It sounds like I think the German was Mitmensch. I can't remember what the first translation had. It wasn't fella.
It is Thomas Mann, right?
Well, first I have to say,
is it written by Thomas Mann?
Yes. These are two translations from the beginning of Thomas Mann's Dr. Faustus. Yeah. I don't know where it is in the first part.
It sounds almost funny.
Yes, yeah. To find out what it is in the first, yeah. Anyway, well, I also should out myself at this point and say actually the first translation is by myself. I didn't realize that the Thomas Mann translation was available on the internet. I had a bit of a panic, and then Edith sent me a link. I think it was Edith, wasn't it? You sent me a link. Somebody sent me a link to the Low Porter translation, which is the Penguin translation, which is the second one. I know a couple of points. I think I can say, I'm not going to say that mine is better or worse, but I think I can say that mine is truer to the German. The German is extremely long with long winding sentences, and Low Porter tried to make it more British and concise. I'm not saying that this is necessarily right or wrong. This is one of these big questions about translation. Do you wish to stay more faithful, to sound more German-like, to have these sentences which is in the original? I promise you the original in length is closer to mine. Or do you wish to make it more concise and British? There is one thing, though, I completely understand Low Porter saying prison house. I think she says some breath of secrets of our prison house. That sounds dramatic. It is absolutely wrong from the German is Einsamkeit, which is either loneliness or solitude. And I would slightly stress it's important to keep that word. I'm passionately defending myself here, but again and again, Thomas Mann stresses the loneliness of Faust. And he uses this Einsamkeit for the loneliness of people who have taken the path of National Socialism and are going to be crushed by the world. And I think that word, I can understand the prison house, and maybe she was thinking of later of hell, but I would definitely stand up for the word loneliness. However, there is another translation out there. I forgot that I definitely couldn't find. So I haven't translated the whole book. I
mean, now I look at the two. You're beginning to throw some weight onto the one side of the balance. So,
oh, absolutely. Yes, I should do. Well, why not? I mean, it's my translation.
yeah.
But it was quite amusing because I had translated it in complete ignorance that I'd lost the book. I did used to have the book, and I translated it having searched desperately, and it was a bit short. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to translate all this stuff myself, and I had no choice. I was convinced that you could get the translation with no problem on the internet. I don't know how Edith found it. You can't get it with no problem. A sort of simple search engine solution doesn't give it, but Edith found it somehow, and so it is up there. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, thanks to you.
And as I say, there's a new translation recently published. There was some very heated debates about 10 years ago or 15 years ago in the Times Literary Supplement about the quality of Low Porter's translations. And I think a lot of the comments might have been justified, but I have an unpleasant feeling or an unpleasant taste in my mouth that this translation was criticized after her death, that all this controversy broke out after she couldn't defend herself. And after all, if you're going to translate the whole of Thomas Mann's works, I mean, you're more or less giving half your life away, which is what she did. I mean, she must have spent about 20 years of her life doing these translations. And you didn't have Google and stuff in those days looking for instant, easy, uses of obscure words. And Thomas Mann was very difficult German at some parts. So she did a pretty good job. And I think it's a little bit slick for some people really to lambast her now as they do and mock her. I think she slipped a bit with the short stories, is my feeling, but she did a pretty good job with Dr. Faustus. I thoroughly enjoyed it anyway. I've read it first in English.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I'll stop screen sharing.
So the biographer, so Zeitblum, believed the apocryphal, well, not only Zeitblum, Thomas Mann, I should say, believed the apocryphal account of Nietzsche's, Leverkusen's, having been infected with the devil's little friend. This theory has been somewhat discredited recently, relatively recently. There was a very long article actually in the Daily Telegraph about it about 20 years ago, that Nietzsche's madness was caused by syphilis following his visit to a house of ill repute in Cologne when he was a student in Bonn. I don't know the details of it, but this theory has been certainly challenged, and it's not certain at all that he suffered from syphilis. But as far as Thomas Mann was concerned, that was a useful symbol for what had happened to Germany and what happened to Leverkusen. So Thomas Mann believed the apocryphal account of Nietzsche's or Leverkusen's being infected with the devil's little friend, one I've already referred to, the spirocate bacterium called Treponema pallidum, better known to her friends as syphilis, while visiting a house of ill repute in Cologne. There it is said that the student Nietzsche chose and was chosen by infection in the form of the little devil-gifted bacillus, which was to drive him into insanity, but which also heightened his genius. So it was a gift of the unmentionable. In Adrian Leverkusen's case, he was infused with Treponema pallidum by the New World courtesan, and her name was Heterea Esmeralda, the name given to a glass-winged butterfly, which was among the collection of butterflies shown to the two then children, Adrian and his friend Serenus, by Adrian's father. We have actually a little picture of this butterfly, if you've got that stead. Yeah. It's interesting enough. Joys of the internet, you can even find these things. Oh, it's a rather pretty little butterfly. And Heterea is, I probably very badly pronounced there, is a Greek, I think, for prostitute. And yes. This, am I right? Yeah. And this little butterfly.
Courtesan. It's a courtesan.
The courtesan. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, the courtesan. Yes.
Is a more dignified,
more elegant.
More elegant. I accept that.
It is Hetera. Hetera is called.
Hetera Esmeralda. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. I could spend an hour talking of this biography, this musical account of Nietzsche's life, this account of Germany's fate as Faustian temptation, this account of the rise and downfall of Zeitblum's dear friend. I first read the book in Helen Lower Porter's translation when I was, I think, 17. And I remember seeing the Penguin edition for some time at my school and didn't buy it then. I bought it when I was in university, but it was always a sort of temptation for me. I felt that this book would disturb me, and it disturbed me so badly. I really, yeah. The front cover showed, interestingly, Penguin chose Ludwig Korinth's Selbstbildnis mit Skelett. And that's the front cover of the Penguin edition. And I don't know if anybody knows his paintings. If you go to the Pinakothek in Munich, there are about 5 of his paintings. There's probably a name to this. They probably knows the name to this kind of painting. If you look very closely at the painting, it's almost abstract. And then as you move further back, it becomes less and less abstract. And that's very much Korinth's style. If you go right up to his paintings, it looks very abstract. But as you step back, you can see what the picture is. And Ludwig Korinth also did an Ecce Homo, which is used, I think, on one of the covers of the Nietzsche Penguin. So here we have the skeleton. There's Munich, of course, in the background with life going on. And in the midst of life, we are in death. And a very sort of Burschiko's down-to-earth Faustian figure there. But somehow, I think it works. He's in the full of life. He's a successful artist, but maybe not everything is all right. There's a certain sadness in the eyes. I found that picture very fascinating. It drew me, and it was the book that was waiting for me, shall we say, when I was in university.
I think the style of painting, which is quite broad, quite direct, suits the subject very much. It's a fairly sort of non-prissy, quite masculine way of painting, I think.
Yeah, yes.
It reminds me of the Swedish artist Anders Zorn as well. It's very painterly.
So, interestingly, in the Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann, the story does not begin with the temptation, and the reader is in anticipation of the temptation, as I was, and as the author is very well aware. And the forbidden one does not appear until nearly halfway through the book. Leverkusen has been under observation for a considerable time, in fact, since the early years of his life. He has rejected theology and he has rejected God. The adversary has made preparations. The little glass-winged devil, Saint Butterfly, has given him the gift, the Mitgift. Gift is in German poison, and in combination Mitgift, poison with you, is the dowry, who is destined to eat into his brain and destroy him after, shall we say, 24 years. So Leverkusen is contaminated and he is very sick. Dr. Faustus is an extremely long book, and in addition to the opening paragraph, I have chosen only a few extracts from the long temptation scene. Serena Seitblum has been bequeathed the papers of his late friend, among which is Leverkusen's diary. So we are aware of Leverkusen's end. It's already described in the introduction that this is a biography and that we know that Leverkusen comes to an unpleasant end. And Seitblum has been bequeathed the papers of his late friend, as I say, and in this is Leverkusen's diary, in which Leverkusen records a very strange event which occurred while he was living, as Nietzsche did, in Italy. And here we have in the 15th chapter of the book, the reading from Leverkusen's diary. So we essentially have only two, I think, is it 3 people to read?
I'm just saying, Michael, perhaps you could select before we screen share.
Yes, well, I have already suggested, I think that Frank would be a good tempter. And who would like to read Seitblum? I mean, Seitblum doesn't have all that much to say. Have I got any kind of volunteer for? It's not very long. There's a little bit at the beginning, and and Adrian as well. So we got 2 people. So, Michael, would you like to read Adrian? I think that would be good. It's not very much. And Sightbloom has a little bit at the beginning here. So perhaps someone who hasn't read?
Shall I read Sightbloom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll start now, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. The document repeatedly hinted at in the pages of this work, Adrian's secret records, after his decease landing in my possession and guarded as a dear and terrible treasure. Here it is, as originally recounted. The moment in this biography to introduce it is here. As I have said in spirit, turned my back upon the refugium where I had found him, sharing with his Silesian companion that unconventional abode. I now suspend my words and hand over the reader to his in this 25th chapter. His words alone, what follows is a dialogue. Another, one quite other, a horribly other, dominates. And the man writing in his stone-flagged hall only puts down what he hears. A dialogue? Is it truly a dialogue? I should be mad to think so. And for the same reason, I cannot believe that he either, in the depths of his soul, thinks what he saw and heard was real, while he heard and saw and later when he put down to paper, regardless of the snide asides by means of which his interlocutor sought to convince him of his objective presence. But if he did not exist, this visitor, and I shrink from any admission based on even conditionally allowing him the possibility of having been real, then it is still dreadful to think that such snide asides, mockery, and self-sparring emerge from the soul of the benighted one.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So this is I is Leverkusen, is Adrian Leverkusen. So it's Michael.
Oh, for me. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All day long, suffering creature, laying in the dark with a wretched hemicrania. Several times must choke and vomit, as happens with severe attacks, but towards evening, unexpected improvement and almost instantaneous. Could keep the soup down with which the mother brought me. Poveretto, drank with good cheer red wine after, bevy, and was so sure of myself that after I treated myself to a cigarette, was sat alone in the hall, close unto the windows, the shuttered ones, before me the length of the room by my lamp table, and was reading Kierkegaard on Mozart's Don Giovanni. Then
Sorry, it's my mistake. Then I feel
of a sudden myself struck by a biting cold, so as when one were sitting warm in a room in winter, and suddenly a window opens out to the frost outside. But the cold did not come from behind me where the windows are, but before me. Look up from the book and look into the hall and see that Schildknapp had already come back, for I am not alone. Somebody is sitting in the gloom on the horsehair sofa, the one with table and chairs near the door in the middle, where we take breakfast in the morning, sits cross-legged in the corner of the sofa. But it is not Schildknapp, it is another, smaller, nothing as dignified, and not a gentleman. Relentlessly, the cold presses against me. Che Costa is what I call out in a strangled voice, pushing on the arms of the chair with my hand so that the book falls from my knees to the floor. Answers the calm, slow voice of the other at the same time, a trained voice with pleasant nasal resonance. Hey, spricht nur Deutsch? Speak only German.
No, this is he. This is Frank.
Oh, okay.
You are I, it's your diary.
He spricht nur Deutsch. Speak only German. Out with it, only fine old German, without gloss and dissemblance. I understand it. It is my favorite language.
Sorry, I've just made clear these dots because otherwise it would be too long. I had to leave out.
Shall I continue?
Yes, I'm just saying that's a big break. Yeah.
Everywhere where the hourglass is placed and time is given, inconceivable but limited time and a fixed end, then we are there. There our fields of barley and of rye. Time we sell. Shall we say now 24 years? Can that be anticipated? Is that a good and proper measure? One can lead a life already like cattle and astound the world as a great necromancer with much devil's work. There may be one, but long evermore, forget all lameness, and with great insight rise beyond himself, yet without being foreign to himself, being and remaining oneself, only raised to his natural height by a little Dutch courage, and in drunkenness at his dungeons of every delight savor nearly unbearable infusion of inspiration. So that he more or less rightly is convinced that such inspiration has been unknown for thousands of years, and that he may just about consider himself to be a god in a few choice moments of exuberance. How would such a one trouble himself with the moment when it is time to think of the end? It is just that the end belongs to us. In the end is ours. That must be agreed on and not just tightly accepted, however much it may be otherwise concealed, but explicitly from man to man.
So you want to sell me time?
Shall I continue?
Please.
Time, merely time? No, my good friend, mere time is not the devil's merchandise. Then we will not have rightly earned, which is in the end, which is in the end will come to us. I think there is a big dramatic.
No, it is. I defend myself. It's really a bit like that.
Okay.
The punctuation, which is in the end, will come to us. Perhaps there should be an and.
Whatever it is, sorry. A kind of time that makes all the difference. Grand time, rapturous time, a devil of a time, take you higher and higher, ever higher, but again, a little miserably, naturally, profoundly miserable. I don't just admit it, I stress it with pride. For it is right and proper, that is the way with an artist's creation and artistic nature, which it is well known at all times, tends to exuberance in both directions. It's quite normally a little liable to step out of line. The pendulum always swings far up and down from exuberance and melancholy, but it's the usual way. In manner of speaking, it's the moderate and civil the manner in which the Nuremberg artists painted gloom compared to what we deliver. For we offer the most extreme in this direction. Euphoria we offer, and insight, experience of freedom from restraint and unchaining, experience of freedom, security, lightness, feelings of power and triumph, so that our man can hardly believe his senses, including, and on top of all that, the colossal admiration for what he has created, so that he can rightly dispense with what is not part of him, the shudder of self-worship. Oh yes, the exquisite dread of oneself, appearing to the world like a blessed voice, a divine monster. And fully correspondingly deep, honorably deep, even now and then, not just in emptiness and desolation and helpless sadness, but also down into agony and nausea, known already, but had ever been there, that belongs to the disposition, just appreciably strengthened thanks to the illumination and the delirious buzz. Those are pains which you accept with pleasure and pride for what is immensely enjoyed. Pains known from a fairy tale. The one about a little maid, a pain like a cutting knife, which she had in her human legs as she replaced her fish tail with them. You know Andersen, Little Mermaid? That would be something for you. Just say the word, I'll conduct her to your bed.
How much longer must I sit and freeze and listen to your insufferable tripe?
Tripe, must listen, as though you will listen to a popular song. Meseems you are listening most attentively and are impatient to know more, to know all. Don't pretend that I'm intruding. I have myself respect too, you know, and I know that I'm not an uninvited guest. In short, the metempsychosis that is the digital process, and I assure you, it is as though the little ones had a passion for the high regions, a special attraction for the area of the head, the meninges, the dura mater, the tentorium, the pia mater, which protect the parenchyma within. The swarming at the moment profess general contamination with passion.
It suits you, the manner of your speech. Ludovic seems to have studied medictinum.
No more than you have theology, that is to say, in a fragmentary and specialized way. Will you deny that you study the best of the arts and sciences only as a specialist and aficionado? Your interest was owing to me. I'm much obliged to you. But how shall I, Esmeralda's friend and support, as the one you see before you, not have a particular interest in the respective, the salacious, the closest area of medicine, and feel at home there? Your propensity, friend, to inquire into the objective, the so-called truth, to suspect the subjective, pure experience as unworthy, is really petty and can be overcome. You see me, and so am I to you. What is the point of asking if I really am? Is not truly what truly works, and is truth not experience and feeling? What raises you, what amplifies your sense of strength and power and demeanor? Devil take it, that's the truth. Where it's seen 10 times from some virtuous headway as a lie. That is what I would say. But an untruth with his empowering quality overrides every unsavory virtuous truth. And I would say that creative genius granted sickness, sickness which on its high horse takes obstacle in stride in a bold trustful springing from crag to crag, is 1,000 times more friend to life than his health, traipsing along with food. Never have heard anything more stupid that from sick only sick things come. Life is not dainty and gives not a fig for morality. Takes hold of a bold face of sickness, feeds on it, digests it, and as it makes it its own, so it is then health. Before the fact of life efficiency, my friend, and distinction between sickness and health is quite undone.
Am I not to be named the price to pay in guilders and gridirons? Come, speak. How is life in Bone Rattle House? What awaits those who fall into favor with you in the dell?
He laughs high-pitched and squeaking. You see knowledge of pernicious confutatious, do you? Excessive curiosity, learned impudence of youth, I call that. Have so much time, you cannot think it will end. You will experience before then such excitement. You will have other things to do and think about the end. But I shan't refuse to tell you, and need not paint it in pretty colors, since who can be troubled by what is far away? It's just that it isn't actually easy to talk about it, in fact. Actually, one cannot talk about it in any way at all, because of what it is not covered by the words. One may need and use a lot of words, but all of them, each and every one, are representations of names which are not, cannot lay claim to depicting what can never be depicted or denounced in words. That is the secret pleasure, security, or hell. That it cannot be denounced, that is shielded from language. That it is, that cannot be placed in the context of events, cannot be made public. No critical word can grasp it, whereby words subterranean, prison house, thick walls, soundlessness, desolation, beyond hope and help, are just weak symbols. My good friends, with symbolism, must you be completely satisfied when the talk is of hell, where everything ceases there, not only the indicating word, but everything that is indeed its principal characteristic. And what one can generally say about it, and what the newcomer experiences on arrival, in which he with this, shall we say, healthy senses, I lost my thread, stop moving, cannot grasp and cannot, will not comprehend, because reason, or whatever link to comprehension it may be which hinders him, is short for, because it is unbelievable as to turn one chalky white, unbelievable, albeit it opens in greeting in a stark, impressive force. But here is all abandoned, all pity abandoned, all mercy abandoned. stripped off down to and beyond the last trace of consideration for the beseeching, unbelieving plea. You cannot, you cannot do this to a soul. It is undone, it is done. It happens, and without any talk or being brought to retribution. This in a cellar deep below is unproof to God's hearing, and that forever. It is difficult to talk about it. It is beyond and without the capacity of language. It has nothing to do with talk. It has no relationship, knowing not what time form it is to be used. So the future is chosen. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Well and good, a few expressions taken from the limits of language, but yet remains just weak symbols with no right relation to what will be there, with no rise, lost to others' memory between thick walls. It is right to say, but it is very loud, where being is insides are proof. Immeasurably loud here, bursting with chattering and chirruping, groaning, moaning, whinging, whining, yowling, gurgling, clamoring, crouching, and kicking up the shindy, begging and torture fun, so none can make out his own singing, because it is stifled in impervious, thick, infernal jubilation, and warble shame and degradation, prized out by the unending application of the unbelievable and the unjustified.
Thank you very much. That was
Thank you.
most impressive.
I'm drying up.
An Olympian effort, Frank. Olympian.
That was a superb, a deeply sinister rendering. Thank you.
You know, these Germans really are nuts.
I think it would be much, much easier for me to understand it and comprehend it in German than in English.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, isn't it, that's a question. Isn't such a text somehow unnatural in English?
In what way?
I mean, too complex for the English language.
I'm not English, of course, I'm Italian. But I mean, the German language with very long sentences is very distinct.
Yes, but
it's like Old Greek almost.
This makes me this confirms what I thought might be a good idea, that when we look at texts in foreign languages, we should perhaps have a split screen with the
German. Yes, that's something for the future indeed.
Yeah.
Well, I find that the text was too small to read, to follow, at least on my computer.
The size.
I would like it to be a little bigger.
Sorry, you should have said, because I can alter the size. So sorry about that, Stefan.
Thank you.
So, yes, Leverkusen becomes the greatest composer of his time, introducing into his later compositions a studied atonality, the rules of which Thomas Mann found in Schoenberg. The term atonality describes music that does not conform to the system of tonal hierarchy. It may therefore be seen as decadent. Is modern atonal disharmonious music thus music of the devil's party? A nihilistic end to Western and certainly Faustian culture? It may be so. Then a paradox. Dr. Faustus is not only a biography of Leverkusen, it is an account of the fall of Germany. And those who, by Mann's account of the Faustian temptation, were hell-driven when defying probability and reason, so that one may indeed wonder if occult forces were not at work to help them, bathed in the intoxication of their unbridled power, as they undoubtedly were, banished as Jewish degeneration the very kind of music of which Adrian Leverkusen in this account is a staggering example. Leverkusen's collapse at the end of his account of his life, which he gives at the end of the book, obviously mirrors Nietzsche's collapse, because he must fulfill his part of the bargain and be taken at the hour of his death to a place unspeakable, is the end of Faust that takes us right back to Marlowe and the Faust legend. Before then, like Nietzsche, upon whose life in so many ways Thomas Mann's biography of Adrian Leverkusen is based, his reason gone, his mind overcome, his reasoning reduced to imbecility, is taken back as helpless as a child to be nursed in his last years by his old mother. Exactly what happened to Nietzsche, incidentally. Leverkusen's last composition is Dr. Fausti Wehklage, Dr. Faustus's Lament. I finish as I began in the first part of this rather long talk, which has gone over 3 sessions now, with the Historia von Dr. Johann Fausten several months ago. And here to conclude the recording of the music, here is Ivor Bitova's remarkable rendering of the 7th and final part of Andre, or is it Alfred Schnittger's Faust cantate, Seid nüchtern und wachtet, stay sober and keep watch, the text of which is taken from the Historia von Dr. Johann Fausten. This is the kind of music I imagined for as Leverkusen's last composition, the Wehklage, the complaint, the lament, the cry of pain. You can follow the German text from the original Faust book. I presume we could do that technically, can we? Have the text up and listen to the music at the same time? Sure we can. The text, have you got the text there, Steph? Perhaps I didn't put an English translation, but that's not a big problem.
Yeah,
that's the last link. I hope you've got the text.
The YouTube.
Did I not send it to you?
Yeah,
no, not the YouTube, but there's also the text.
Yes.
Or, did I send it? Yeah.
Yes. So
I should just go through the text first.
Right. Let's do that.
So this text is for the Seid nüchtern und wachtet is taken from the end of the Faust book. I'll read it in German and then I'll briefly give sort of spontaneous. It's unlike Thomas Mann's relatively easy. Es geschah aber zwischen 12 und 1 Uhr in der Nacht, dass gegen dem Haus her eine große ungestürmer Wind ging, so das Haus an alle Orten umgab, als ob es alles zugrunde gehen und das Haus zu Boden reisen wollte. Darob die Studenten vermeinten zu versagen, sprangen aus dem Bett und huben aneinander zu trösten, wollten aus der Kammer nicht. Sie hörten eine greuliche Pfeifen und Sischen, als ob das Haus voller Schlangen, Nattern und anderen schädlichen Würmer wäre. Indem geht Faust die Türe auf, der hub an zu schreien um Hilfe und Mordio aber kaum mit halber Stimme. Bald hernach hörte man ihn nicht mehr. Als es Tag war, sind die Studenten in die Stuben gegangen. Sie sahen aber keinen Faust um nichts, denn die Stuben voller Blutes gespritzt. Sein Herrn klebt an der Wand, weil ihn der Teufel von einer Wand zu anderen geschlagen. Es lagen auch seine Augen und etliche Zähne, allda ein greulich und erschreckliches Spektakel. Letztlich aber funden sie seinen Leib heraußen bei dem Mist, welche greulich anzusehen war, denn ihr der Kopf und alle Glieder schlotterten. Which is very, I'm sorry, I forgot to translate this. I hope I can. Yeah, it took place between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the night as a tempest shook the house. You would think that the house was going to fall down and will be torn off. And the students jumped out of their bed and hugged each other, but they were too afraid to leave their rooms. They heard a terrible whistling and howling as though the house was being beaten and as though snakes, serpents, adders, and other ghastly creeping creatures were there. And then the door to Faust's apartment burst open and there came a great cry of help, murder, but nobody responded to his voice. And then when we heard nothing more. And then as it was day, the students went into his room, but they didn't see Faust. They saw nothing, but that the room was full of blood, sprinkled with blood. If you can scroll down a bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, this is quite gruesome. His brains were sticking to the wall where the devil had smashed his brain from side to side. His eyes and all his teeth were lying about. It was a ghastly spectacle. Finally, they found his body on the dunghill. It was a terrible thing to see because his head and all his limbs were hanging in tatters. That was, yeah.
Can
So
you
if-
enlarge the text a bit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. So, and then we can.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the end of the translation, isn't it? Yeah. So
Yeah, here it is. Here's Eva Bitova's remarkable rendering of the seventh and final part. Oh, I think I've said that, haven't they? Yeah. You can follow the text from the original Faust books, which tells of Faust's fate, a terrible noise heard by students between midnight and 1 in the morning, where they find the body in the morning mangled and blood spattered. The genius who flew, now so horribly overthrown. This is a remarkable piece of music. Will people be able to hear it, or do I have to do something again? It should be okay, should it? Or do I have to share again?
I brought speakers after.
Okay.
Yeah. So we shall see. So if it's not, yeah, let's try this. If not, then you can share it, Mike.
Yeah. I can't hear anything.
No. Okay. So several people couldn't hear anything.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't hear anything.
Okay. Father Frank, could you hear something or not?
No, I can't hear anything.
Okay. Well,
Instead, if you have the speakers, can't we then hear as we hear you speaking?
I mean, I've got the speakers plugged in.
Why can we hear you and not the speakers then?
Right.
I hear it, but
I think most of us can't, I think.
I've got the speakers plugged into the headphone socket, so it should work. I don't. Yeah.
No, nothing at all. It's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, perhaps Mikey, you could put it up.
Yeah. So what do I have to do again? I always get this wrong. I think you have to.
You're still the co-host.
Am I? So yeah, but I don't.
Go into your browser and put the
The
video.
thing is, I can't actually see where I can go into my browser because you kind of take over the whole screen.
Go to the.
I got Optionen. That might be. Yeah. Okay. Bildschirm freigeben. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me if people can hear something. Oh, well, that's great. I can't hear that.
it's not playing.
Ah, yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Could you hear that?
Yeah, but then you turn. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody hear that?
Yeah. If you could turn it up a bit, maybe. Yeah.
Turn it up.
Oh, okay.
Ask me to do technical things here. Right. Okay. Yeah. Up there. That's it. Yeah, I've got it up pretty high. I'll turn it up a bit more, but she gets quite loud.
Yeah, that's probably going to be fine, Michael.
I think it should be, yeah.
ein großer und gestümer Lied. So alle Orte du gab, was so besonders Die Studenten vermeunden, so versagen sprangen aus der Welt von Union, ein ander zu trösten, unloser kommen nicht. Sie hörten ein bläuliches mit halber Stimme, bald hörte man ihn nicht mehr. Als es Tag war, sind die Studenten in die Stuben gekommen. Sie sahen alle keinen Fuß zu links, denn die Stuben waren letztlich so einen Leiber aus seiner Beine.
Yeah, it was very impressive, very impressive.
Yeah, that's. I think she was enjoying herself. About
Yeah, I would never have thought it was such a text would have given birth to that.
I think she was like a furious, Erinice in ancient Greek.
Yes, yes.
A very Chthonian, very like Medusa.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Not someone to get on the wrong side of, perhaps. Yeah.
Indeed.
Like a personification of modern feminism, something like that.
Well, I think she has more elegant,
Okay.
but yes.
Bloodthirsty.
Bloodthirsty indeed. So my conclusion, after what I've spoken, I invite those who listen to see for themselves how much of the confrontation of the world and the future of our planet might be the stage for two combating forces whose nature and origin is the subject of the Faustian legend. Of that great temptation, and sometimes in the struggle it is even hard to discern which is God and which is devil. The extreme of choice is the adversary's proposed reckless, glorious, but fatal freedom opposed to the secure, unfree, suffocating caution of obedience and security. Is this the end of the mightiest of cultures, either to be drawn into sin and death or to sink into incapacity and lameness? Or, most horrible of all, both at the same time? What of our end? Where lies the temptation and where the comfort? Will we be left with the music of the machine? The yearning which modern man has for protection by machines and chemicals suggests to me a retreat from God-given nature into a man-made surrogate world of unromantic, pragmatic, altruistic, total safety. The world promised by our politicians and protectors in reaction to an epidemic which our hardened ancestors would have laughed out of court as little worse than a sneeze. Indeed, COVID would have been at a loss for victims in earlier days when few people lived to over 60 years old anyway, and only a handful of the very wealthy were overweight, while it today seems that only the wealthy minority are not overweight, is to convert human society into a global nursing home. So maybe it is the cautioner and counselor of safety and security who will abruptly strip off the mask of benevolence to expose the death in life smirk of the deceiver, for the deceiver is a master of disguise. I have argued that the Faust legend and the legend of Don Juan, which I believe it is closely related to, are present in many of the debates and challenges which society faces. Do we seek to emulate Don Juan and Faust, or should we condemn them? In the case of the Faustian temptation, are we entirely sure who is the tempter and who the tempted? At first glance, it seems surely that Faust, as he lives his life before succumbing to temptation, is living a life of sobriety and legality, when the tempter scents an opportunity and offers him the opportunity to break boundaries, relive the life he missed out on in return for his soul. And what is this soul which Don Juan and Faust sell to Satan? For Houston Stewart Chamberlain, whose writing is totally discredited today by the guardians of modern reason, according to this discredited writer, the soul, the personality, the ever-changing, self-aware human being, is the essence of Faustian man. When considering the Faust legend or the legend of Don Juan, we are compelled to consider our understanding of the nature of the human soul. To coin a well-known phrase, it's the soul, stupid. I hope with this overview of the Faustian temptation that I have heightened awareness of its pervasiveness as a legend, and which underlies a large part of our culture, the notion that success is linked to the sacrifice of the soul, the unending conflict between freedom and safety, in which today the preachers of safety seem set to rule the planet, but whose safety, by a perverse paradox, may itself contain a fatal Faustian experiment. All the time we are presented with the choice between conformity and freedom, obedience and rule breaking. And this has been dramatically demonstrated in the months of the epidemic, an epidemic which was created, evidence suggests, out of a laboratory researching the possibility of gain function technology on a virus in China, which virus subsequently escaped to breathe with devastating effect on a terrified world. The terror with which statesmen and experts everywhere reacted to the presence of the virus exceeds by far the fear created by the much more terrifying Spanish flu in 1918 and 1919, showing us to what extent populations now value extending their lives and keeping safe beyond their freedom to run their own lives and enjoy life in the manner of a Don Juan or Faust. It might seem that humanity is taking the warning of the Faustian and Don Juan legends to heart. However, the matter is not so simple, because if, as seems likely, the current virus is indeed a human creation, then it would be that it is as a result of a sort of Faustian daring and challenge of God's law that the virus itself came into existence. A humanity deeply anti-Faustian would presumably never have research laboratories experimenting on viruses in the first place. Nevertheless, the world's masses were not asked for their opinion on this matter, and it comes as a shock to many who live unaware of how far the world's powerful are in pursuing Faustian experiments that China was supported in its research in Wuhan by the United States, and I suspect by Europe too. So we run to the new priests for consolation, not priests of the church, for there is little religious faith these days among the peoples out of whom the Faustian culture grew, but the new priests of the secular age, to wit, doctors, health experts, and their master cures. Vaccination and mass vaccinations remind me of the mass weddings carried out by the Universal Church of the Creator, the late Reverend Moon, or of mass baptisms organized by a sect. Faith in vaccination has, in the way I see it, replaced religion or has a religious quality about it. It does promise the salvation of the world, but is it a Faustian promise? Those who wish to live longer, their little lives of beer and skittles, must agree to do so with their blood. Blut ist ein ganz besonderer Saft. Save me, save me. The promise is in your blood now. You are protected. You are saved. Glory be to science. Our heretics, champions of freedom, or themselves compromised beings whose hubris has led them to become pig-headed and selfish? Did not Don Juan and Faust bring disaster and even death on others as well as themselves? Struggle too long with demons and you become yourself a demon. Is the quest for more and heightened health and defeating disease taken to the extreme of trying to defy death, not itself Faustian and part of Faustian culture, even though it may paradoxically be seen too as a quest for greater comfort? Suspicions of a Faustian pact are rife among the observers of the absurd and obscene antics of many stars and entertainers, and dark rumors of horrors indulged in by an elite whose intentions many believe are diabolic. The transformation, to take a simple example out of many, of the singer Taylor Swift from sweet country music girl to howling immodest harridan is very suggestive of the transforming power of a Sabbath. The question in that respect is only whether the acts and symbols are displays of allegiance or are mere publicity seeking, sensationalism. The film Rosemary's Baby, itself a retelling of part of the Faustian temptation, unholy in its conception, if I may dare a pun, itself quasi-blasphemous, is seen by many as a depiction of the contemporary reality of the Faustian temptation. Another interpretation is possible. That is, this is all a dying Christian legend and dying Christian culture that we have before us and will disappear in a growing age of reason. Under this dispensation, there is neither Christ nor devil in the Faustian temptation, only the legends born out of a declining religious superstition. See, Faust was visited by no devils. He died as the result of a chemical experiment he was carrying out around the year 1540, trying to create gold out of base metal. But even in the depths of reason, are we not in the Faustian legend again? For is not this quest to improve on nature itself not succumbing to temptation? In this case, to create gold, in this case, to create gold out of base metal, to ceaselessly improve on ourselves and nature until the possibility is the human being himself will no longer be necessary. Will our own creations, Mike and Ash and Alexa, replace us? Remember Mike from the Stepford Wives? Remember Ash from Alien? They were robots. What will become of the human soul when the takeover is complete? Am I right to choose the word when and not if? Will then the adversary not have achieved his end, which is, as Mephistopheles candidly admits, the extirpation of the race of Adam? And the exquisite irony would be not through the wrath of any god, but by his own hands and of his own free will. Habe nun, ach, Philosophie, Juristerei und Medizin und leider auch Theologie durchaus studiert. Oh, thank you. That was
Thank you very much.
end of my long, intended to be an hour originally, didn't quite work out like that.
I'm sure there were probably works written subsequent to Thomas Mann that would perhaps continue the theme in a modern incarnation.
Christopher Nye, who's best known for The French Lieutenant's Woman, wrote a book which I don't think was very good, which was the Faust theme again. And it does take place in the Middle Ages, well, not the Middle Ages, in the 16th century. And there is quite an amusing scene where they go into the church in Geneva and hear Calvin preaching. And at the end of that, Mephistopheles breaks Faust's neck in rather sordid description. He actually takes his head and twists it round and snaps. But I don't think it was personally a very good book. But that's the one example I know of a modern Faust.
I'm sure there are many. I've got a few points to raise, but I'm sure other people have. So I don't want to take time away from other people. Does anyone have any pressing question or point to put into the ring?
I have some thoughts. In the beginning, when you brought up this notion of wine and women and the world and enjoying life and bringing life to a world of suppression and death and all that, that reminds me of Omar Khayyam and the writing of Edward Fitzgerald. So that shouldn't be anything new to the British public from the last shift in time. I mean the last millennia or no decade maybe. So for some 100 years ago. So that kind of this dichotomy of self-made prison and ruling and dictating how the world should be run according to some Western way of thinking, and at the same time harboring the very ideas of freedom and this time from the Persian world or from the German world and all that. So you have this conflict or bipolarity, what we call it,
Yes. I think actually
it's always present here. And now we have you're right on spot about the industry becoming the priesthood of our time, the big tech telling us what to believe and what to do and what to think and total control. And at the same time, this idea of Promethean, stealing the light or fire from the gods and being punished for that. And thinking of the end of the tragic end of Faust, which reminded me of this, what you called in Thomas Mann, the biblical vengeance. The punish is always there in some kind of, Old Testamentally American way of thinking. Okay, this has to come to an end, and it wouldn't, end well for those, don't try this. Don't try this because you will fail. We will catch you at the end of the day. So that is, those bringing up the stories like this, make a point like this. I mean, as you pointed out, who is the Faust? Is that the industry or is it ourselves? Or, I mean, what is the temptation? What is the temptation? Should we choose the physical life or the immortal soul? And I don't think the goal should be this obsession on the alchemic way of thinking from some 500 years ago, the time of Sir Isaac and Francis Bacon and all those esoterics. But I don't know, the golden ages maybe, when to live and what to do with our immortal souls and our loneliness. So that is our the eternal questions.
Well, it's a huge subject, but pinpointing it down a little bit, and perhaps one point that I didn't mention or that you sort of hinted at, I would suggest, is that in the British or the Anglo-Saxon tradition, there is one aspect of the Faustian temptation which perhaps is a little bit stronger in our tradition than in other countries, like Germany or France or whatever. And this is the very clear, the wine, woman and song and the Puritan condemnation of that, which is enormously strong in British politics, as a matter of fact. I mean, there is this underlying current, and having lived in France and Italy and Germany, I really can say this with some experience. It's much stronger, this conflict between we want to have fun and no, fun is bad for you. This notion of the sinfulness of fun, and then the absolute impulse to have fun, and that this translates into politics, the very moral element in British politics of condemning people almost in a Christian, using a Christian lexis, is stronger than in other countries. And if you think of the Civil War, the Britain's War of Religion, which was much less brutal than the wars of religion in Germany and France, was nevertheless different in that he saw so clearly that on the king's side there was this element of a kind of live and let live and irresponsibility and who cares who gets what sexual disease and all the rest of it. And on the other side, no, we've got to have justice, and we've got to bring justice and God's law to the world. And sinfulness is among us, and everything that is beautiful, everything that is extravagant or beyond one's earthly needs is a temptation of the devil. So this aspect of Faust legend, I think, is stronger actually in English tradition than in other traditions.
But you're not, or are you? Would you suggest that it's intrinsically a function of Christian culture?
I thought someone would.
I don't think so. May I just?
Yeah, no, please. I didn't know who you were.
This is not about. Maybe you can, call it take the blame on Christianity, but I don't think so. I think it's the military tradition of you have this British Empire, and okay, you have this Victorian tradition. Everything is seen, and you have to stick into this military tradition, and also the nursing among the women, and focus on the task. We have higher mission to accomplish. Don't do like French. Don't stick into this romance and the women and the nude and naked and all those art. I mean, you can compare the French approach to life and wine and all those things, and the British very military and disciplined way of thinking. I think that the religion has transformed into some kind of military and social control in order to keep this whole empire together. Maybe.
Just to have some more voices, Stefan, you raised your hand.
Yes, I think it has much with Protestantism to do, and Calvinism. This notion of correct and not correct, and this is interpreted in our. This is very convenient for today for political correctness, because I'm hearing it also all the time. That is correct. That is not correct, and they can say the most absurd things, and they deem them correct or not correct according to their superficial notion of the zeitgeist of the political correctness, or of their contradictory notions of self-contradictory notions of principles and several things which cannot withstand the lightest criticism, and so
I think, in fact, I think that's a very good point. I think this idea of political correctness comes out of what one could call the Abrahamic vision of the world,
yes,
where there's one particular people, one particular system, which is the way to go, and the others are not. It's sort of contrary to the pagan view, which seems many forms of life as being valid. One thing I did want to pick up on before people leave and go to the dinner, because several of you here have got particular experience of this point that Michael raised, talking about Spengler's view of the Faustian. In your talk, Michael, you were saying that Spengler contrasts the Faustian with the Hellenic or Apollonian culture, which he describes as the culture of restraint and closed horizons,
Yes. Yeah.
where they believe in a sort of eternal renewal, eternal
Yes.
present, rather than progression, moving forward into a new
Yeah,
sphere.
yeah, and it's interesting how often that is criticized, and by what writers, and I mean writers of the right or the extreme right. I think Yockey in Imperium actually criticized that, and other where he was usually very pro Spengler. And Jean Mabillot, that I mentioned, also really got quite angry in his preface to his introduction to his book on Nordic gods, which I've just started to read, because with all these competitions in Yorgots, I feel I've got to know something about these Nordic gods. And I thought, oh, hi, he's picking up on this Spengler thing there. So yeah.
So I would definitely like a yes or no agreement to this particular point, this analysis by Spengler, from Father Frank, Michael in London, and Stefan, because I think you've all got knowledge of either the Greek world, the Mediterranean world, and the Northern world, so you're in a good position to sort of say.
Well, I must say that the Hellenic world is not the Mediterranean world. The Hellenic view, the Hellenic culture was brought by Nordic invaders, and actually the Yamnaya people, and there is also a very recent study and publication on that, although it has
isn't
been.
that another point? That isn't that? Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but
yeah, it is Indo-European. Indo-European, and I think, well, when Spengler says, and so much has been said from German side. I'm very fond of Germans, but there is some kind of exaggeration there, because it is difficult to say something. It is difficult to understand Spengler's critique of a culture which starts with Heraclit. If one knows what Heraclit stands for.
So your view is you don't agree with Spengler,
No.
and you think, okay, the Faustian is an Indo-European thing as much as anything, maybe, so it's common to both halves.
Yes, that thing to try to go to the limits of something, but in the Greek world there is also this notion of measure, metron, and Heraclit, who said war is the father of everything. He said also that Helios, the sun, is not going to go beyond its limits, or otherwise the cosmic justice will go after him. Helios, who hyperviste μέτρα, η δεμή ερηνίες μην, δίκης επίκουρη εξευρίσουσι.
Wasn't there a Greek philosopher who foresaw the possibility of the splitting of the atom and said that should not be further researched?
Democritus. Yes, but that is no mistake, because we called
urban legend, I think.
Atom later. What we called atom was not atom. Atoms are in his notions. In his notion, Democritus' notions are the particles, the elementary particles.
They can't be cut, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wrong. It's just a story I heard.
Atom means non-divisible.
Yeah. Father Frank, what do you think about Spengler's assertion?
Actually, I would be happy to leave Spengler to others, but I wanted to make a brief point about Don Juan, because I've been to Seville and I've seen a place called Hospital de la Caridad, which the locals tell you was founded by Don Juan, who was a sinner who repented of his sins and endowed a hospital or a house of treatment to atone for his sins. And today it is a very smart care home, not really care home in the English sense, but a place with trees, like a garden open to the people.
Nice.
Where he atoned for his sins that way. And the next point, very briefly,
that's a very interesting point.
You should go to Seville only to see that place. But the next point comes from a passage in Herbert Marcuse's One-Dimensional Man. Marcuse was one of the philosophers of the Frankfurt School, and his book, which became the Bible of the student unrest of the 60s, is called One-Dimensional Man. And actually, although Marcuse was completely out of tune with our views, if I can speak of our views, Marcuse at the same time criticized advanced industrial society because it had flattened reality. Man here had become one-dimensional, only one way. And I think that there is a fine phrase there that says, today we know how to deal with the rebels or subversives like Don Juan. We just cure them, we treat them with psychotherapy and various psychological techniques. And that's part of a flattening of a dimension of a wider dimension.
Oh, that's so interesting. I don't remember that. I remember reading One Dimensional Man many years ago. I don't remember the reference to Don Juan. That's revealing.
What is more one-dimensional than Marxism and even more neo-Marxism? I don't understand.
I think he went against it. He dropped Marxism and wanted everybody to go back to primitive nature, natural living, like the tribes in the Amazon, you know. He got fed up with Marxism towards the end of that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not a lot of people mention that because they focus on his Marxism, you know.
Yes.
He got fed up with it. I mean, everybody does, don't they? Because it's very one-dimensional. So, you know, as I said, you know, you can't really. Anyway.
I'm glad that's amused, tickled your fancy. Michael, you've had a lot of obviously contact with Mediterranean culture, paganism in its historic sense, and other cultures. What do you think of what Spengler says, whereby he seems to say that the Faustian is essentially something Northern European?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I don't see it particularly as exclusively Northern European. I see a divide, but that has spread through. I mean, it's almost it's more ubiquitous, at least throughout the Eurasian West. I mean, you had a split between Vedism and Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster inverted the whole process, and he exalted certain things that were not exalted by the Vedic peoples. Eventually, Vedism became more similar when it became Hinduism. But you have from the Greeks alone, you have the Orphics on one side. Maybe although Plato rejected the Orphics, he was very much similar. And there's this whole exaltation of truth, as opposed to the sophists and even Aristotle, who could claim that happiness is the end-all goal that we're all after, that happiness doesn't lead to anything further. Happiness is the goal. So you have this kind of dichotomy throughout most of our culture between, I think probably one of the people who really expressed it the best, for me at least, was Robert Pirsig in Zen, what is it? Zen.
Art and motorcycle maintenance.
Yes, thank you. And so you have this sophist exaltation of value and consideration of value, and then you have this other position which is always exalting truth, and it's always truth with a capital T, and that feeds into Christianity, maybe the Abrahamic religions to a wider extent, but we really get it through Christianity, at least in the West, and it's very Orphic. It's very denying the understanding of the body, of the pleasures of the body, and it's trying to exalt a transcendental, almost a I can't think of the word I want right now, but it's an ascetic approach to not to follow the flesh, but to exalt something that is otherworldly, transworldly, and we have it throughout our whole culture. It's always been there. It's never resolved. And one has to either make a choice or somehow find a compromise between the two, but I'm not really sure what that compromise would be.
Indeed.
Yeah, and maybe it's in the energy of that sort of dynamic opposition that sustains a certain vitality, and that's quite important. But presumably this isn't a purely Northern European thing, because surely the Chinese at present do represent something Faustian. Michael, in Cologne.
Well, yeah, but is there a Faustian conflict in China, or has there ever been? I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not aware of it. I'm not in any way knowledgeable. I don't know anything about Chinese literature or anything like that. But I would have thought that had such a conflict existed, one would have been made aware of it in the way that one's made aware of the code of honor in Japanese society, or Chinese wisdom and religion, Chinese medicine, and so on. And I know nothing of this notion of sinfulness of pleasure, with the notion that pleasure responds by saying this is freedom, and to preaching about the sinfulness of pleasure is being dictatorial. I don't see that conflict existing at all, to my knowledge, in China.
The Chinese exalt, well, where we exalt freedom in the West, the Chinese exalt harmony. And I don't know how that translates exactly into the Faustian paradigm, but either you harmonize with the state, with the culture, and if you don't, then then that's wrong behavior. And so they do set up a kind of dichotomy, but maybe they express it differently. But I'm not sure how different it really is.
But I think if it has to be a temptation, then the dichotomy would have to be shown, in my view, if it's Faustian, in that there was an accepted or a force or a power in Chinese society that was on the other side of the fence, so to speak, and wasn't just a few wrongdoers, or even many wrongdoers, or individuals who are sent to re-education camps or whatever it is. There would have to be, in the tradition of China itself, an alternative, a conflicting force. Otherwise, I don't think that one could speak of a Faustian culture or anything like that.
I can add something here, because it is the Chinese temptation is the technological singularity. This is about, we are coming to a point that when technology gets smarter than the man, and then you have, as most of you, pointed out this, personal freedom, and the Faustian option for the Western man will be how to make sure that there is a choice. And at the end of the day, it's about, the rise of technology versus the rise of the man. And, what is needed for a Chinese system to bring in harmony, that is the technology. But for the Western side, which is, obviously, how to assure that the freedom of choice is still there in one way or another. So we are captured in a play. So if Chinese make a move, then you are forced to behave in such way, and you can see that in the daily politics. Yesterday about G7 and how they want to face the Chinese challenge. It's about technology this time, the technological singularity. And all
So
that
is the temptation. So there's a kind of conflict in China between technological sharing and technological singularity. Is that what you're saying?
No, I see that the Chinese society maybe has not that so much problem with, technological singularity, because, the most important thing is, as you mentioned, harmony and the social control of the government and all that, totalitarian or collective, way of thinking. So the transcendence of people, maybe you can change, the nature of humanity by, some genetic, engineering and all those things needed to sustain this harmony and keep the society together, in order to, expand the Chinese way of thinking. And then you have just that conflict. And this is a huge conflict between a Western mindset and this very Chinese mindset, as many philosophers like Giorgiani see it.
But yes, but even in China, there's a conflict between, or a divergence between Confucianism, or the Confucian emphasis on honoring the state, honoring the parent, honoring so forth. And then you have your Taoist, and your Taoism is a much more, it's not conformity. It's not allegiance to the state in the same way that the Confucian emphasis is. And so you do have a divide even within Chinese culture. One seems to be more successful than the other overall now with the Chinese state, but it's still there. And who could say that one is not more successful in the West too? We have our radical protest movements, but we also have a corporate military control that so we have a whole divide equally.
Before people have started to leave, Father Frank left. Unfortunately, before we could thank him for all his sort of
deeply sinister
very
rendering.
considerable. He
Yeah.
made a big contribution. I just like to say that on Wednesday there will be a moot, and it will be featuring a gentleman from Greece talking about the Odyssey. So Stefan, it would be nice perhaps if you would be able to.
I'm under pressure this period because I'm teaching students through internet, and they have exams this period. But I shall try.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm
Send
just as long as people know. But yeah,
send me a link.
And this will be the first of moot that will be in an actual room, both online, and so I'm keen that we have a few people attending online and in person, so that's good. I know you're going to the theatre, aren't you, Michael?
Yes, Leopoldstadt.
Yeah, which sounds really interesting. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yanis, the speaker, has said that I may show the recording to individuals, so I can let you have.
Yes, I would really like to hear it.
But he doesn't want it uploaded publicly because he essentially.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So, that's good. So that's on. That'll be Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So if Mehran, you or Edith are free, it would be nice to see one group of people who are growing in size, who seem to be representatives of those who have totally resisted what one could call the Faustian temptation, are the various groups of people that are generally known as the Amish in America, that have deliberately rejected using things like chainsaws, most of them in cars, keeping a certain level of technology because they think that is a way that is good for them to live, and it will give them some degree of closeness to the divine, degree of humility, and they seem to be thriving, really. What's your view of such a community, Michael, in Cologne?
May I tell you something?
Oh yeah.
I think we are in our era. We are slavish towards technical technical inventions, we feel somehow forced to adopt everything new that comes up, and so that dictates our course forward. In ancient Greece, there was there was an awe towards nature. For example, they had the technical ability to make a bridge over Hellespont, but they viewed it as an intervention into nature's order, into cosmic order, and they denied to do so. Today we have no measure, and it is only money and how is it called, usury, and the other word, Gewinst, profit. Yes, that dictates everything. And I think this is too bad. It is turning the order of things upside down. It is the lowest that determines the higher. And then it is this which finances the research and directs it to the direction it wants, and so on and so on. Michael said at some point that reason tends to substitute Christianity. I think it is not reason. It is another good expression which I noticed from today: reason reduced to imbecility. This is the modern. This is when I'm listening to Danish radio and to their leftist propaganda. It is really reason reduced to imbecility.
Yes, like two things there. Going to Stead's question about the Amish and so on. Yes, they could even be a role model, but there is one important caveat, and that caveat is that you live at the mercy of powers that possess a higher technology. If you believe in God, and you're protected by God from the temptation of the devil, but if any power decided to walk over the Amish, there's absolutely nothing that the Amish could do. They are tolerated. Yeah. But there is nothing they do because they have renounced the very technical tools that would equip them. However, when you use these technical tools, are you then entangled yourself in the very world that you're fighting? I mean, that is the eternal problem and dilemma of that. And yes, I want to say that absolutely agree with that point about the domination of money. And you can see that very clearly espoused in the novels of Ayn Rand, who was who took that to its extreme point, and in very readable novels, took it to its logical conclusion. And actually at the end of, I think it's, yes, at the end of Atlas Shrugged, which is one of her best known novels, the hero, who is pure reason, makes the sign of the dollar instead of the sign of the cross over the over a landscape in which all nature is simply there in order to be denounced or to be exploited. But there is a kind of a contradiction. I remember at the beginning of The Fountainhead, in which sort of a hero Nietzschean Superman seeks solitude, and he finds this lake, and he swims in the lake, and in his imagination he's carving up the stone around the lake in a huge building project because he's an architect. And I immediately think, well, if he realizes his plans and everybody does that, he won't have any solitary lake to retreat to anymore. And that contradiction lies at the heart of a lot of these notions of progress, where they always think there's going to be some more forest to exploit more, but there isn't. And that's what people are coming to realize. There's got to be a point where it doesn't continue anymore. But those are two different points. Anyway.
And in that sense, the natural pleasures then become financially very, very valuable. So
what do you mean?
Well, the fact of being able to go for a swim in a pollution-free lake somewhere, and to move in a landscape that doesn't have too many people, that becomes financially valuable and something worth contending for.
Yes, but if you pursue the logic that Howard Roark does in The Fountainhead, then although you seek that, it won't exist anymore. That's what struck me, at least, with Rena. But that would have been a question I would have put to her if I'd ever met her.
I think what I'm suggesting is that one could actually just still pursue profit, but what actually is financially valuable could change depending upon the circumstances, and therefore that could also be a motive for cleaning up the oceans. Various
Oh, I
things.
see.
Anyway, that is a whole other issue. But yeah, it'd be interesting to have some contact with people from the Amish community. Would it? Yes, to
Well, they wouldn't be very good Amish if they appeared on your webinar. That would be wouldn't be able to take them seriously if they did that.
I don't know what. It's quite conceivable that they would not expect everyone to live like that, but think that they've got a function to play. That they themselves should live out this life, and they have a beneficial effect in the same way that monks, don't necessarily expect everyone to be a monk, but they think they have a benefit to cast sort of a balance really the rest of society. But I think we've all been here for quite some time, and I don't want to keep anyone from his or her.
May I just add one thing? I mean, there were two key words in previous streams, and this stream as well. It was women, and it's about the female power, which is so underestimated and branded as witchcraft in many notions. One thing is very interesting. I mean, we are living with all those the masculine way of thinking and defining the world. These German gods, Schrödinger and all those thinking how I mean their philosophy is dictating and rule our mindset. And another thing is the wine, which is symbolizing some kind of transcendence. So you have to shift your mindset in order to see the world in another way. And then you have your Don Giovanni, because he's not there for the pleasure. I don't think so. The point must be that he's after this very knowledge, the new frontier, through women and the wine to the new world. So wine and women are also means for this kind of masculinity to transcendent. Otherwise, it would be pointless, because in today's world, who are stopping you to enjoy all drugs and sex and porns and all those things? No problem at all. But in his case, he has a mission. This is some kind of alchemy in his work. Okay, that would be enough for me. Any comments? That would be nice.
Okay, I think so. I think let's sort of formally kind of end the.
Well, I'll just very briefly comment on that. Because I
go, Michael.
I know you have to go, Sted, do you? I'll comment just very briefly on that. That's an absolutely valid point. But there again, the question is this indulgence, woman wine? Who said that, woman wine and song? I can't remember where that comes from. But anyway, it's an indulgence in perhaps the non-rational, and a very rational and technocratic society will look increasingly askance at that. And that is exactly what we see, particularly, and it's no coincidence, in countries that have been touched by Puritanism. This epidemic has given these countries an excellent chance to berate with even greater strength indulgence in sin, because don't have contact with people, certainly don't have sex with people. Excessive alcoholism is also bad. I mean, they say no smoking in pubs. That's more sinfulness. So this has all come together because it's another consciousness, but it's not the consciousness of technology, that's for sure. If you want to be very technical and organize yourself technically, you shouldn't be drunk. That would just be the point about that I would sort of throw in. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks.
There is lots to say. We could
I know,
continue
it's
talking
a
for
whole other
hours.
issue, whole nother issue. But thanks everyone for.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and
I know. I
hope-
think the majority of people have, so that's good. Thanks, thanks, Miran. Thanks, Stefan. Thanks, Edith. And
perhaps Stead, you should point out, because some people don't know, that you can see these on. At
Yes.
some stage, I think we'll move it to another sort of thing. But at the moment, it's under the London blot, isn't it? You can
yeah,
see
the
them.
London bloat.
If you missed any of the previous Soterize,
So
they're all there, except Richard. Richard the Satan's not there.
Yeah.
The London what?
The London
Bloat.
bloat. The London and then BLOT. I should find it.
It's been YouTube, so you can see the previous Soteria meetings.
All right.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.